Lesson 2.3, Simplifying Variable Expressions. Terms of an expression are the parts of an expression that are added together. Coefficient of a term with a variable is the number part of the term. So if you have a term such as 2x, the coefficient would just be the 2. It's just the number part when you're multiplying next to a variable. Okay, it only occurs when you are multiplying or dividing. It's the number when you are multiplying or dividing a number and a variable. Constant term has a number but no variable, like 4. So if I have x plus 4, 4 is the constant term. See how there is no multiplying by a variable. There's adding, but there's no multiplying. Like terms are terms that have identical variable parts. If I have 2 times x, and then I also have 3x, those are like terms. They both have an x. If I have 4m and 5b, those would not be like terms because they do not have the same variable. It also means that they have to have the same exponents. So if this is x squared and I have 3x squared, because the x is squared, they would be like terms. Let's look at an example to help with the vocabulary words. More than anything, these vocabulary words are important in this lesson. If I have the expression 2x plus 3x plus 4, what are the terms? The terms would be each part that's being added to the next. Here's one part, that would be one term, so there's one term. Here's the second part, that would be another term, and 4 would be your third term. So there are 3 terms in this expression. What would be the coefficients? Now remember, coefficients only happen when there is a variable being multiplied next to a number. So 2 is a coefficient, and it's just 2, and 3 is a coefficient, and it's just 3. It is not 3x, it's just the number. 4 is not being multiplied by a variable, so it is not a coefficient. So 2 and 3 are called coefficients. Constants would be just the number. No variables, just a number. In this case, a constant would be 4. 4 is not being multiplied by any number, any variable, so 4 is the only constant. You cannot have a number that is a coefficient and a constant. Like terms. The like terms are the ones that have the same variable expression, same variable, which would be 2x and 3x. Example 1. Identify the terms, like terms, coefficients, and constant terms. First of all, we need to change all of our subtractions into adding, because in order to identify the parts, everything needs to be adding. So instead of subtraction, let's change it to plus, but because I changed subtraction to addition, the 2 becomes negative 2. Okay, remember, same, add, opposite. Subtraction, change it to addition, 3 becomes negative 3, and this was already adding. And there is what we just wrote. Now let's identify the parts. Please note that this x right here has a number next to it. It has a coefficient of 1. X equals 1 times x. Remember, anything multiplied by 1 is going to get itself. So when you have 1 times x, you just get x. So it's like an invisible 1 is right next to this x. And that is called a coefficient. Let's talk about the terms. The terms are the parts that are in between the addition signs. So that would be pretty much everything except the adding. So you'd have 5 and negative 2x. That whole thing is a term. Negative 3 and x. So you have 4 terms here. The like terms are the ones that have the same variable part. Well, here's an x, so negative 2x and x are like terms. But you also have like terms when you talk about 5 and negative 3. What's their variable part? Well, there is none. So they are like terms because they have no variable part. Coefficients are the numbers next to the variable. So here's a variable. The number that's being multiplied to it is negative 2. And remember, what's the number being multiplied to just a single x? Positive 1. Constant terms are just numbers, no variables. You cannot have negative 2 or this 1 as a constant term. It's just 5 and negative 3. At this point, please identify the terms, like terms, coefficients, and constants. Remember, change this to adding, add, and then the opposite of 6. Pause the video at this time. So we're going to change this to adding. 6 becomes negative. The terms then are 4y, negative 6, and positive 3y. If you had a positive 6 here, that's because you didn't change to its opposite. Make sure when you change everything to adding, you add the opposite. Like terms, look for the same variable parts, which is 4y and 3y. Coefficients are the numbers that are multiplied next to y, which is 4 and 3. And the constant, and again, coefficients and constants cannot be the same, are the ones that have no variable, which is negative 6. 2, remember to change everything to addition of the opposite. Pause the video if you have not completed number 2. Number 2, we're going to change this to adding a negative, adding a negative. Remember, if this was already negative, it would become a positive. The terms then would be positive 9, w, negative 5, and negative 8w. If it is easier for you to see, you could put a 1 next to this w if you keep forgetting that there is a 1 next to it. Now, the like terms would be anything with the w, so 1w and negative 8w. And remember, without any variables, those are also like terms. Coefficients are the numbers next to variables. In this case, 1 and negative 8. Constant terms are all other numbers, which is 9 and negative 5. Remember, if you are not getting this negative 5 as the answer, that's because you're forgetting that you need to change subtraction to adding the opposite.